The massive ship drifted silently through the darkness of space, its hull gleaming under the light of distant stars. Inside the bridge of the Earth Space Force vessel, Pathfinder, Captain Jack Torres stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the mysterious planet grow larger on the main screen. "Scanning complete, Captain," announced the ship's computer. "The energy readings are unlike anything in our database." Torres nodded, his eyes fixed on the swirling purple clouds covering the planet's surface. After 6 months of following faint energy signatures across 3 star systems, they had finally found something worth investigating. "Take us into orbit," he ordered, his voice steady despite the excitement building in his chest. The Pathfinder smoothly entered orbit around the unnamed planet. Initial scans revealed ruins of what appeared to be an ancient city, partially buried under centuries of dust and debris. But what caught everyone's attention was the steady pulse of energy emanating from deep within the ruins. "Launch the survey pods," Torres commanded. "I want boots on the ground in 30 minutes." The landing party, led by Torres himself, descended through the atmosphere in their protective suits. As they touched down near the ruins, the scale of the discovery became clear. Massive structures of an unknown black metal stretched toward the sky, their surfaces covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change when viewed directly. "These buildings," muttered Tom Wilson, the team's engineer, "they're still powered after all this time. The energy efficiency must be incredible." Torres led his team deeper into the ruins. Their lights revealed corridors that seemed to respond to their presence, subtle illumination following their progress. The air was stale but breathable, suggesting some kind of atmospheric maintenance system was still functioning. "Captain," called out Lieutenant Reed from a side chamber, "you need to see this." The chamber Reed had discovered was clearly some kind of laboratory or research facility. But what made Torres's breath catch was the holographic display that activated as they entered. Streams of data filled the air around them, and among the alien symbols were patterns they recognized immediately. That's DNA," Wilson whispered, his scanner working overtime to record everything. "Human DNA." Torres stepped closer to the display, his mind racing. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just an alien ruin. It was something far more significant. The DNA sequences floating before them weren't random. They were perfectly preserved human genetic codes, stored in an alien database that predated known human civilization by thousands of years. "Run a full spectrum analysis," Torres ordered, his voice tight with controlled excitement. "I want every piece of data in this room cataloged and transmitted back to the ship." As his team worked, Torres explored deeper into the chamber. The walls seemed to react to his presence, lighting up with more displays. One showed what appeared to be Earth, but not as they knew it. The continents were arranged differently, suggesting this data was ancient beyond comprehension. "Captain," called Wilson, his voice shaking slightly. The computer just finished its preliminary analysis. "These DNA sequences, they're not just similar to human DNA. They're exact matches for specific genetic markers we all carry. Markers we never understood the purpose of." Torres stood in silence, absorbing the magnitude of what they had discovered. This wasn't just a random alien outpost. This was evidence that humans had been part of something far greater, long ago. Something that had been lost to time until this moment. "Send a priority message to Earth Command," he finally said. Tell them we found something that changes everything we thought we knew about human history." As the message was sent, none of them noticed the subtle change in the ruins around them. Deep within the ancient systems, programs that had waited millennia began to activate. Humanity had returned, just as the builders had planned. The real discovery was only beginning. 3 weeks after their discovery, Captain Torres stood before the Stellar Council in their grand chamber on Alpha Station. The massive room, designed to accommodate beings from 100 different worlds, seemed to dwarf the human delegation. Floating platforms held representatives from across the galaxy, their forms ranging from crystalline structures to beings of pure energy. The head counselor, a tall figure with silver skin that rippled like mercury, spoke in the universal trade language. "You claim these ruins belong to your ancestors." The doubt in their voice was clear. "Humanity has barely mastered faster than light travel. The technology in those ruins is beyond even our understanding." Torres kept his voice steady as he replied. "The evidence is clear. The DNA sequences in the database are human. We have a right to study our own history." A ripple of what might have been laughter moved through the chamber. The head counselor's silver surface flickered with patterns of disapproval. "Many young species discover ancient ruins and claim them as their own. It is a common desire to seem more important than one is." "We're not claiming anything without proof," Torres argued. "Our scientists have confirmed the match. Those are human genetic markers in those databases." A representative from the science division, a being of pure energy contained within a specialized field, moved forward. "Your species still relies on chemical reactions for basic computing. The ruins contain quantum-based systems that operate on principles you cannot begin to comprehend." Wilson, standing beside Torres, stepped forward. "Then let us prove our connection. There must be a way to demonstrate our right to study these ruins." The chamber fell silent for a moment. The head counselor consulted with others through their species' unique form of silent communication. Finally, they turned back to the human delegation. "There is a way," they announced. "The Trials of Legacy. 3 tests, designed by the Council, to prove a species' connection to ancient technologies. No species has completed them in 10,000 years." Torres felt a chill run down his spine. The Council was offering them a chance, but it felt more like a trap. Still, they had no choice. "We accept." The head counselor's surface rippled with what might have been satisfaction. "Should you fail any trial, you will surrender all claims to the ruins. Furthermore, your species will be barred from any future archaeological expeditions in Council space." The stakes were enormous. Humanity's future in space exploration hung in the balance. Torres looked at his team, saw the determination in their eyes, and nodded. "We understand the terms. The first trial begins in 7 standard days," the Council announced. "You may choose 3 representatives for each trial. Choose wisely, humans. The trials have claimed many lives over the millennia." As Torres and his team left the chamber, whispers followed them. Most species in the chamber clearly expected humans to fail spectacularly. Some were already negotiating for rights to study the ruins after the inevitable human failure. Back on their ship, Torres called an emergency meeting. "They're trying to force us out," he said to his gathered officers. "They don't believe we're capable of passing these trials." "Maybe we're not," Lieutenant Reed said quietly. "You heard them. No one has passed these trials in 10,000 years." Wilson, who had been quietly working on his tablet, looked up. "But that's just it. Maybe no one has passed because they're all too advanced. These ruins responded to us in ways they didn't expect. What if being human is exactly what we need to pass these trials?" Torres considered this. The Council saw humanity as primitive, using their advanced technology as a measuring stick. But what if their advanced technology was actually holding them back from understanding the ruins? What if humanity's supposed weaknesses, their emotions, their creativity, their ability to think outside established patterns, were actually strengths? "We have 7 days," Torres said firmly. "Let's show them exactly what humans can do." The message arrived 3 days before the first trial. Torres was reviewing training simulations when his computer chimed with a priority alert from an unknown source. The message was simple. "Meet us at Docking Bay 17. We can help. Come alone." Against his better judgment, but running out of options, Torres made his way to the empty docking bay in the lower levels of Alpha Station. The bay was dark except for the soft blue glow coming from a small ship attached to the outer dock. "Captain Torres," a voice called from the shadows. "Thank you for coming." A figure stepped forward, and Torres had to stop himself from gasping. The alien was made entirely of crystal, its body transparent, and filled with swirling colors like an aurora. Torres had heard of crystal beings, but had never met one. "I am blue," the crystal being said, its voice creating subtle harmonics in the air. "My team and I were exiled from the Council for our theories about ancient civilizations." More figures emerged from the shadows. There was a floating cloud of intelligent gas, a being made of interlocking geometric shapes, and what appeared to be a plant-based life form with glowing veins. "Why did you call me here?" Torres asked, keeping his voice low. Blue's crystal body pulsed with soft light as it spoke. "Because we have proof the humans are indeed connected to the ruins you found. The Council knows this too, but they fear what it means." The gas cloud being floated forward, its voice coming through a translator. "We have studied the ancient civilizations for centuries. The ruins you found match others scattered across the galaxy. All of them contain the same human DNA markers." Torres felt his heart race. "Why didn't you present this evidence to the Council?" "We tried," Blue said sadly. "That's why we were exiled. The Council refuses to accept that a young species like humanity could have any connection to such advanced technology. It would upset their entire power structure." The plant being stepped forward, extending a branch-like limb that projected a hologram. It showed similar ruins on different worlds, all with the same architectural style as the ones Torres's team had found. "But here's what's truly fascinating," Blue continued. "In all our years of study, none of us could activate the ruins' deeper functions. But you humans did it without even trying. Your brainwave patterns somehow matched the ruins' control systems." Wilson's theory had been right, Torres realized. Their supposed primitive nature was actually the key. "We want to help you prepare for the trials," Blue offered. "We've studied them for years. The Council designs them to be impossible for most species, but they might not be impossible for humans." Torres considered the offer carefully. These beings were outcasts, and helping them could anger the Council further. But they needed every advantage they could get. "What's in it for you?" he asked directly. The geometric being spoke, its shapes rearranging with each word. "Knowledge. Understanding. For centuries, we've tried to understand why these ruins respond to human patterns. Working with you directly could answer questions we've had for lifetimes." And, Blue added, "perhaps it's time for the Council to learn they don't know everything about the universe." Torres made his decision. "We have 3 days until the first trial. What can you teach us?" The next 3 days were intense. The outcasts shared everything they knew about the trials. They helped the human team understand the quantum principles involved, showed them how to recognize ancient technology patterns, and taught them meditation techniques that helped them connect with the ruined systems. More importantly, they confirmed what Torres had begun to suspect. Human emotions, creativity, and adaptability weren't weaknesses to overcome. They were tools, possibly the exact tools needed to pass these trials. As the first trial approached, Torres gathered his team. "Remember," he said, looking at each of them, "we're not just fighting for access to those ruins anymore. We're fighting to prove that humanity deserves its place among the stars." Blue and the other outcasts watched from hiding as the human team prepared. In all their years of study, they had never seen anyone approach the trials quite like this. Perhaps, they thought, that was exactly why humans might succeed. The chamber for the first trial was unlike anything Lieutenant Anna Reed had ever seen. The walls seemed to shift and change, making it impossible to tell how large the room really was. The air itself sparkled with quantum particles, visible to the naked eye as tiny points of light that appeared and disappeared randomly. "The quantum maze trial begins now," announced the head counselor from their observation platform. "Your representative must reach the exit point. The maze responds to consciousness. Choose your path carefully." Reed stepped forward, wearing the simple gray suit provided by the Council. Behind her, Torres and Wilson watched nervously. The Council had seemed almost pleased when they chose a human woman for this trial. Now they understood why. Every other species had sent their most logical, mathematically minded representatives. "Remember what we taught you." Blue's voice whispered through the tiny communicator hidden in her ear. "Don't fight the quantum uncertainty. Embrace it." Reed took her first step into the maze. Immediately, paths began forming around her, corridors of light and shadow that twisted in impossible ways. Some paths split into multiple routes, others seemed to loop back on themselves, and a few appeared to lead into completely different dimensions. The council members watched with smug satisfaction. They had seen countless beings try to solve this maze using pure logic, attempting to map its ever-changing patterns. All had failed. But Reed did something different. Instead of trying to calculate the correct path, she closed her eyes and felt the flow of the maze around her. The quantum particles responded to her consciousness, to her very thoughts and emotions. "Impossible," muttered one of the council scientists. "She's not even trying to map the variations." Reed walked forward, sometimes choosing paths that seemed to lead away from her goal. When she reached intersections, she didn't analyze them. She simply chose the path that felt right. The maze shifted and changed around her, but she moved as if she were dancing with it rather than fighting against it. "She's going to get lost," declared another council member. "No one can navigate quantum space by feeling alone." But Reed wasn't lost. The training with the outcasts had taught her something crucial about quantum mechanics. At its most fundamental level, the universe wasn't logical. It was paradoxical, surprising, and sometimes seemingly random. Just like human intuition. She passed through sections that should have been impossible to navigate. When the path split into 20 different directions, she simply smiled and walked through a wall that nobody else had even seen was there. The maze responded to her acceptance of its chaotic nature, bending and flowing around her. The council chamber grew silent as Reed continued to make progress. She was getting closer to the exit point than anyone had in centuries, and she was doing it without any of the complex quantum calculations that other species relied on. "This is not the proper way to solve the maze," protested one of the senior council members. "She's not following any logical pattern." And yet, the head counselor responded quietly. "She advances." Reed felt the exit point before she saw it. It was like a subtle pull in her mind, a rightness that drew her forward. When she opened her eyes, she stood at the goal, having completed the maze in less than half the time of any previous attempt. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. Torres and Wilson broke into wide grins. Through her hidden communicator, Reed could hear Blue and the other outcasts celebrating quietly. "The first trial is complete," the head counselor announced, their silver skin showing patterns of confusion and surprise. "The humans have succeeded." Reed walked back to her team, trying to hide her smile. The council had designed this test expecting beings who would try to outthink a quantum maze. Instead, they got a human who understood that sometimes the best way to deal with chaos was to become part of it. "One down," Torres whispered as she rejoined them. "Two to go." The council members were already gathering in small groups, discussing this unexpected development. None of them had anticipated that human unpredictability would be an advantage in a quantum maze. They had designed the trial to defeat logic, never considering that someone would simply choose not to use logic at all. Engineer Tom Wilson stood before the second trial chamber, his heart pounding as he stared at the swirling energy field that filled the room. The chamber glowed with pure white light, crackling with power that made the air itself feel alive. "The second trial requires survival in a pure energy state," the head counselor announced, their voice tinged with anticipation. "Your representative must cross the chamber while existing as energy rather than matter. You have 1 hour to prepare." Wilson turned to Torres and Reed, his face pale but determined. "The meditation techniques Blue taught us. They're not just for connecting with the ruins. They're for this." In their private preparation room, Wilson sat cross-legged on the floor. The ancient device they had discovered in the ruins lay before him, its surface glowing with familiar patterns. Blue had helped them understand its true purpose. It wasn't just a tool. It was a key to transformation. Focus on the energy inside you. Blue's voice guided through the hidden communicator. Every atom in your body is already energy bound into matter. You just need to loosen those bonds. Wilson closed his eyes, remembering the practices they had learned. Other species tried to force the transformation using technology, fighting against the natural state of their bodies. But humans had something different: the ability to let go. The council members gathered to watch, many of them discussing the impossibility of a primitive species achieving energy transcendence. Even their most advanced civilizations required complex machines for such transformations. Wilson placed his hands on the ancient device. As he relaxed his mind, the patterns began to respond, spreading up his arms in lines of light. He didn't fight it. Instead, he welcomed the change, accepting it as naturally as taking a breath. "Impossible," whispered one of the council scientists. "He's achieving molecular destabilization without any external power source." The transformation began at Wilson's fingertips, his solid form becoming transparent, then luminous. Unlike the violent transformations other species used, this was smooth, almost peaceful. His consciousness expanded as his body became pure energy. The sensation was incredible. He could feel every particle of energy in the chamber, could sense the currents and flows that made up what appeared to be empty space. The council watched in astonishment as his glowing form rose from the floor. Moving through the chamber was like swimming through light. Wilson didn't fight against the energy currents. He flowed with them, becoming part of their dance. Other species had tried to force their way across, believing strength was needed. But Wilson understood now. The key was harmony, not power. He passed through intense energy storms that should have torn him apart, but his form remained stable. When he encountered barriers of concentrated power, he didn't try to break through them. Instead, he matched their frequency, becoming so similar that he could pass through as if they weren't there. "This defies all known laws of energy transformation," one council member protested. "He's not using any of the standard conversion equations." But Wilson continued his journey, his glowing form dancing through the energy field with an almost playful grace. He reached the far side of the chamber in record time, his transformation back to physical form as smooth as his departure from it. As Wilson stood up on solid legs again, the chamber fell silent. Even the head counselor seemed at a loss for words. The humans had not only survived the second trial, they had made it look easy. "The second trial is complete," the head counselor finally announced. "The humans have succeeded again." Torres helped Wilson back to their preparation room, supporting him as his legs shook from the experience. "How did it feel?" Torres asked quietly. Wilson smiled, his eyes still glowing faintly. "Like finally remembering something I never knew I'd forgotten." The final trial chamber was different from the others. Instead of a single room, it was an entire section of the ancient ruins, transported piece by piece to the council station. At its center stood a massive pillar covered in shifting symbols, reaching from floor to ceiling. "The final trial," the head counselor announced, their voice echoing through the chamber, "requires activating the ancient planetary defense system. Many have tried. All have failed to understand its fundamental nature." Captain Torres stepped forward, but this time he wasn't alone. Blue stood beside him, the crystal being's form glowing softly in the dim light. After the humans' 2 successes, the council had been forced to accept their request for Blue to assist in the final trial. "The system is dead," one council member declared. "No one has ever managed to power it up, let alone control it." Torres and Blue approached the central pillar. The symbols on its surface responded to their presence, glowing faintly. But something was different this time. Instead of the usual patterns, the symbols were forming into images, scenes of destruction, of planets burning, of civilizations falling. "It's not just a defense system," Blue whispered, crystal form pulsing with realization. "It's a memory." Torres reached out and touched the pillar. Immediately, his mind was flooded with emotions: fear, loss, determination, hope. The ancient builders hadn't just created a weapon, they had poured their experiences, their feelings, their very souls into it. The system isn't responding to technical inputs, Torres called out to the watching council. It's responding to empathy. It wants us to understand why it was built. The council members stirred uneasily. Empathy was considered a primitive trait among many advanced species, something they had moved beyond in favor of pure logic. But as Torres and Blue worked together, the human's capacity for emotional understanding proved to be exactly what was needed. Blue's crystalline structure began resonating with the pillar's frequencies, while Torres focused on the emotional imprints left behind. Images formed in the air around them. A great war, an enemy that consumed entire worlds, and a last desperate plan to preserve what remained. The builders, Torres said, his voice thick with emotion, they weren't just trying to protect themselves. They were trying to protect everyone. Every species, every world, every possible future. The symbols on the pillar began to glow brighter. Where other species had tried to crack its code through mathematical formulas and logical patterns, Torres and Blue simply opened themselves to its story, its purpose, its pain. They're going to overload it, warned a council scientist. The emotional feedback is too strong. But Torres and Blue held steady. The defense system wasn't looking for a controller. It was looking for someone who could understand its purpose, who could feel what its creators had felt. The combination of Blue's ancient knowledge and Torres's human empathy provided exactly that connection. The pillar's light grew blinding. Symbols flew from its surface, swirling around the chamber like a storm of living light. Then, suddenly, they settled into perfect geometric patterns, and a soft hum filled the air. The defense system wasn't just activated, it was awake. A holographic image appeared above the pillar. A map of the galaxy with thousands of similar systems highlighted, all now responding to the activation signal. The ancient network, dormant for millennia, was coming back to life. The final trial, the head counselor said, their voice unsteady, is complete. The humans have succeeded in all 3 trials. Torres stepped back from the pillar, supporting Blue, who had weakened from the intense connection. Around them, the defense system hummed with power, not as a weapon, but as a guardian, just as its creators had intended. "We did it," Blue whispered, their crystal form flickering with exhaustion and joy. "No," Torres corrected gently. "We remembered it. This is who we were always meant to be." 1 month after the trials, the great chamber of the Stellar Council looked very different. Where once the human delegation had stood alone, now representatives from a dozen worlds gathered around them. The outcasts, led by Blue, had been officially reinstated to their positions, their theories now proven correct. The head counselor's silver skin rippled with complex patterns as they addressed the assembly. For 10,000 years, we believed we understood the path of civilization. We thought progress meant moving beyond emotion, beyond intuition, beyond what we saw as primitive traits. Torres stood with his team, their success having earned them a place on the council floor rather than in the visitors' gallery. Reed and Wilson flanked him, while Blue's crystal form glowed softly nearby. "We were wrong," the head counselor continued. "The ancient builders didn't create their technology through pure logic. They built it with understanding, with emotion, with the very qualities we thought we had outgrown." The defense system's activation had revealed more than just its original purpose. Hidden within its memory banks were stories of the ancient civilization, a society where humans and other species had worked together, combining their unique strengths rather than trying to force everyone into the same logical mold. The ruins on that distant world were not just a random discovery, the head counselor announced. They were a test, waiting for the right combination of qualities to reawaken them. They waited for beings who could think logically while feeling deeply, who could understand technology while embracing mystery. Images appeared above the council floor, showing the defense network spreading across the galaxy. But it wasn't just a weapon system. It was a bridge, connecting worlds and species in ways that had been lost for millennia. Humanity's trial success has opened more than just the ruins. Blue added, their crystal form pulsing with excitement. It has opened our minds to new possibilities, new ways of thinking about progress. The Council had been forced to reconsider many of their oldest beliefs. Species they had dismissed as primitive were now being studied for their unique perspectives. Worlds that had been ignored were found to contain other hidden treasures from the ancient past. Therefore, the head counselor declared, "We are establishing a new division within the Council. The Department of Human-Ancient Relations will lead our efforts to understand and integrate this rediscovered knowledge." Torres stepped forward when called upon. "We accept this honor," he said, "but with one condition. This department won't just study the past, it will build for the future. We want representatives from all species, all ways of thinking. The ancient builders knew that diversity made them stronger. We should learn from their wisdom." The council chamber filled with murmurs of approval. Even the most skeptical members had been convinced by the evidence before them. The defense system didn't just protect worlds, it connected them, sharing knowledge and resources across the galaxy. "A new era begins today," the head counselor announced. "One where we remember that progress isn't just about advancing technology. It's about advancing understanding." As the session ended, Torres found himself looking out at the stars through the chamber's great window. Reed and Wilson joined him, along with Blue and the other outcasts who had helped them succeed. "What do you think we'll find out there now?" Reed asked softly. Torres smiled. "I think we'll find what we've always been looking for. Not just answers about who we were, but inspiration for who we can become." The stars seemed brighter somehow, as if the ancient network had awakened something long dormant in the galaxy itself. Humanity had proven itself not by showing superiority, but by demonstrating the power of balance, between emotion and logic, between intuition and knowledge, between past and future. The new era's epic journey wasn't ending. It was just beginning.